Okay, so for this video, we're going to be looking at how to create a matrix-like screen right in JavaScript, so you can run it right in your browser. And there are lots of different ways of doing it, getting it exactly like the movie. You know, it's not too hard. We're going to do lots of different versions. Right now, we're going to start off with probably the easiest version that you could do in JavaScript and still look okay. So we have this code right here, and this is going to be our starter code, and you can go ahead and copy it now, or I will also include a link in the comments or the description section that will take you to this code that you can get from GitHub. And so basically the problem is what is the matrix screen? So basically it's just an array of characters that are falling down vertically from top to bottom, and once they get to a certain point they disappear. That's it. Okay, and so the only thing that we really need to consider is how many items do we want to display on the screen at any one time. And that's really going to determine the performance of our application. And so if we had hundreds of characters falling at any one time down the screen, we're really going to see some slowdown inside of our browser. So, we could create thousands of little boxes and, have each box be represented with a character or a blank square. But what we would see is that the frame rate for that application would slow down tremendously. Okay, and so what we want to do is we want to kind of limit that. We want to not display too much, but not display too little, because if it's only one string falling down, one string of characters falling down at any one time, it doesn't look very matrix-like. Okay, so in this version, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do what you saw at the beginning of this video. And so how do we do that? Okay, so the first thing is we're going to define an object that's basically an array of characters. Okay, and so what we're going to do here is first we're going to say function. And this is what's creating our object, and we're going to say falling array. And then this is going to be, we're going to set some parameters here. And so this is going to have an x and a y value. And now we're going to set, so before I go any farther, what I want to do is I want to actually get the actual styling for this for a JavaScript project. And so I'm just going to go to File, Save As, and I'm doing this in Notepad++, by the way. And then I'm going to go down to HTML, and I'm going to call this matrix screen .html. Okay, and I'm not going to save it in my downloads. I'll just save it right on my desktop. Okay. And so now what we want to do is we want to set these values, since these are parameters going into our new object. We're going to set them with this keyword. So we're going to say this.x is equal to x, and this.y is equal to y. And then we're going to have another item within our array, and we're going to say this.letters is equal to an empty array. And now what we want to do is we want to set up our letters. So this is a single string of falling characters. And so the first thing we might want to decide is how long do we want each string to be? Now, if each string was all 20 characters long, there would not be enough randomization to make the effect look kind of cool. So what we want to do is exactly that. We want to randomize the length of these characters. And so for that, we're just going to say var amount is equal to, and we're going to say math.floor, so we're rounding down to the nearest whole number, and we're going to say math.random times 30, And so this is going to give us a random value between 0 and 30, not inclusive of 30, but we don't want that. What we want to do is have a minimum value of 5. So this is actually going to give us a value between 5 and 35, exclusive of the 35. Okay, so just double check that. So that looks good. And what we want to do now is we want to create a for loop, because now we have the amount of characters that are going to be in our array. Now we want to assign those characters, okay? And so for this, we're just going to say for var a is equal to 0, while a is less than amount a plus plus. Let me scroll down a little bit. Okay, and so what we want to do is we want to say, so we want to get the character. Now there's just a few ways of getting the character, but we're going to get the character represented as a number, okay? And so this is a perfectly legit way of getting a character. And if you're not new, if you're new to programming, basically we can turn a number into a character, okay? For instance, I'm not sure if this is exactly correct, like 93 is equal to a lowercase d, okay? And like 67 is equal to an uppercase d, all right? And so all we need to do is get a number in that range. So we could say var, and this is our character number, so we're going to say char num, and we're going to basically do the same thing that we did here. So I'm just going to copy this. I don't want to retype it. And we're going to add 35, and we're going to say 4,000 here. Okay? And so if you look at an ASCII chart, you're going to see that the first 35 or so characters represented by numbers are actually like tab and space and return and stuff like that. And so they don't really make really good visuals for like a following array of characters. And this you can extend out as far as you want. I'm not sure what the extension is, but once you get into like the late 4, 5, 6,000s, you start getting into character sets from all kinds of different languages. Like you might get character sets from Chinese, like Cantonese, Mandarin, Japanese, whatever. Okay, I don't know how far this extends out, but I think it might go to. Honestly, I don't even want to make a conjecture there, because I would just be making stuff up. Okay, so I don't want to do that. But it goes pretty far. I just chose 4,000. It works. You can choose or research it and choose what you like there. And then so what we want to do here is we want to set this dot letters. And so letters is the array up here. And so inside this for loop, we're setting the characters in that array. So we're going to say this dot letters push, and then we're going to get the actual string character from this number. And so how do we do that? We say string dot from charcode, and then we just give it the number. And so our number is saved in this variable called char num, and there we go. Okay. And so what we want to do now is we want to create a lot of these, okay? So this is a single following array, and we want multiple following arrays, okay? And so what I want to do is I want to create a variable, and I'm going to call it falling letters, and that's just going to be equal to an empty array. And I'm going to very long variable name there, but it's going to allow us just to change it in this one spot. Okay, so that should be 2 R's. So this is amount of following arrays, and so that's let's just call this falling arrays. Okay, so that makes it a little bit more descriptive. Since we are calling the object itself falling array, this is the list of objects. Okay, and so that's I try and keep that kind of convention going. So what we want to do here is we want to create some arrays within our falling arrays. So I'm going to start off with our amount of falling arrays, and so we're going to say for a is equal to 0, a is less than amount of falling arrays. Okay, then we're going to say a plus plus, and I'm kind of getting off the screen here. And so we're going to specify a y value. Okay, so the x value, the x value is going to be the x within our, so x is going to be across. Okay, and y value is going to be how far off the screen we want this to start running so that it all doesn't run at the same time. So we want them staggered. Okay, and so what we're going to do is say here is we're going to say var random y. Oops. And we're just going to do that math.random. Now, here's something interesting is we want to specify how big a square is that each letter will fit into. Okay, so how big is that square that each of these is going to fit into? And this is going to tell us where we should start this y. We don't want it to just be a random value between 1 and 500. We want it to be a random value between 1 and 500 with an increment of the size of that. Okay, so we're going to come back up here, and we're going to create another variable, and we're going to call that square dimension. Okay, so var square dimension, and you can play around with this. We're going to set it at 20 for right now. So the letters are going to be in a square 20 by 20. Okay, and so here we have our random y, but we haven't changed this yet. So this is going to be, we're going to say random times 10, and then here we're going to say times our square dimension. All right, and so that's going to be our random y. And so here what we're going to do is we're going to push some falling letters. So falling arrays. Falling arrays dot push, and we're going to push in this new falling array. Okay, so we're going to say new falling array, and remember, falling array takes in two parameters. It takes in an x and a y. Our x is going to be a times square dimension. Okay, and then our y is going to be random y. Okay, so we have that, and what we want to do is we're going to see what that looks like. Okay, now we want to set up our game loop. Okay, so this is just what's gonna loop over our arrays. And so here we're going to say function and so the first thing we want to do is we want to set up a clear rect. Okay, and so what is the dimension that I got going on here? I say 800 by 600. Okay, you can change this around, but if you do change the width and height, you might end up having to change this quite a bit, and then also some of these random values down here. So, that's something that you can experiment with later. But we're going to do a ctx.clear rect, and we're going to say 0, 0, 0, 0, and then we're going to say 800, 600. And so every time that game loop runs, it's going to clear the screen in a rectangle starting at 0, 0, so the top left-hand corner, and with an 800 width and a 600 height. So it's going to go all the way down here. Or, this is much bigger than 800 by 600, but you get the idea. Okay, and so now we want to actually draw those letters. Now, ideally, we'd probably want another function called draw letters, but we're just going to do it right in the game loop. Okay, so we're going to say for var a is equal to 0, while a is less than falling arrays dot length, and then we're going to say a plus plus, and then so this is the array of objects that has a falling array in it. Okay, so there is going to be 50 of these. All right. Now, what we want to do is iterate over this. Okay, this dot letters. So this is the array of letters for each of these arrays. So we're iterating over the array of these objects and then the array of these letters for each of those objects. Okay, and so for that we need an inner for loop. So we're going to say for var b is equal to 0, while b is less than falling letters at. So we're going to do this, copy. Falling arrays at a dot letters. So this gives us the array within that object, and then we're going to say dot length. Okay, so what is the length of that array within that object? And then we're going to say b plus plus. And so what we want to do here? Well, we want to give it a color. So var, and we can randomize this later on. So var color, we're going to set the color at RGB, and then we're going to say 0, 1, 0. Okay, and we'll look at how we can experiment with this a little bit later on. And then what we're going to do is we want the first letter to be brighter. Okay, in this implementation of the matrix screen, we want the first letter to be brighter, and then all other trailing letters, they kind of take that muted green look. Okay, and so what we want to do there is we want to say if b is equal to 0. So this means that if b is equal to 0, it is the first character within this array. Okay. So if b is equal to 0, we're going to say ctx dot fill style is equal to, and then we're going to say. So I just got these colors off of looking at a color picker. So if you go to Google and search color picker, it'll allow you to kind of get the appropriate color you're looking for in hex or RGB or HTML notation. All those or RGBA even. So you could you get it in the notation. It makes it pretty easy to get a color that you would be comfortable with for your project. Okay, and so this is going to be 51. And so if we're dealing with RGB, sorry about that, the screen was a little bit down. If you're dealing with RGB, this is going to be the red value, this is going to be the green value, and this is going to be the blue value. So this means that we are full on green. And so this is going to be a very bright green. But we don't want it all green. We want it that it's kind of like a muted green, I would say. Like it's not just green, okay? For the matrix green, it kind of looks like a old CRT monitor type green. Okay, and so if it's the first character, we want it that really bright greenish color, and then all other, we want it to be somewhat similar, but a lot less. And so we're going to say 0, 128, and 0. Okay? And then we're going to say ctx.font is equal to, and we want it to give it its size. Now, our size is a 20 by 20. So it wouldn't make sense for this to be a super large letter or a super small letter. So we're going to be right there in the middle, and we're going to say 15 pixels, and we want it to be Arial. Now, you could choose you could change this font size a little bit and change the font to fit your needs, but that's just what we're going to go with right now. And so here we're going to do ctx.filltext, and we are just going to draw these characters. And so we're going to say falling arrays at A dot letters at B, and that's going to give us that letter within that fallen array. Okay, and where are we going to be drawing it? We're going to say fallen arrays at A dot X, and then this is going to be fallen arrays at A dot Y. Okay, and we're going to push this off to over here so that it can be seen, and then we're just going to add something. Okay, so if we're doing all these characters at the same Y, they're just going to be all jumbled up on top of each other. And so here we need to add something as we go through this a little bit. Okay, so as we iterate over this, we want it to be behind or trailing the first character. So we're going to say minus, let's see here, what are we going to do? We're going to say plus, and then we're going to say -1 times B, which is the amount of letters we have. So this is the letter that we're on. And then we're going to say square dimension. Okay, and so this is going to give us a negative number. Remember, as we go down on the Y, it's positive. And so we want it not ahead of the Y the letter that we're on. We want it behind. And so that's why we multiply it by the -1. We take the letter that we're on within this array and multiply it by the square dimension, and that's where it should be trailing, somewhere back there. Okay? And then, so that concludes the inner part of our for loop. Now, we want this to advance as it goes down. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to say fallen arrays at A dot Y. So we want the Y to advance. And we're just going to say plus minus square dimension. Okay, so we want it to advance to the next square that it should be drawn. And then we're going to get rid of it. We're going to say if falling arrays at A dot Y minus falling arrays at A dot letters dot length times square dimension is greater than 600. Okay, so if that's the case, we have exited the screen. Okay, it is the last letter within that array is, and I'm not sure if y'all can exactly see that, but in fact I'll make it a little smaller. The last letter within the array has left the screen. So if that's the case, what do we want to do? Well, we could get rid of the array. And so what purpose would that do? So the next time it draws to the screen, it won't draw that particular item within the array, that object within the array, and we'd be left with nothing. Okay, so eventually it'd be a blank screen. So what we want to do is populate the screen with a new array. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So to do that, we want a random row and column that it's going to start off with. And so here we're just going to say var random y is equal to math.floor math.random. And here we have 40 columns to choose from. And we're going to say times square dimension. Looks good. And then so this var x is going to be very similar. So I'm just going to copy and paste. And we're going to say var random x is times 10. And so this is, how high above the screen we want ours to start. Okay, and then this, since we want it to start negative in negative territory, so above the 0 mark, we're going to say times -1. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to push that to falling letters. So we're going to say falling arrays at A. So the current spot that the one that we want to get rid of is on, we're just going to cover it up with a new falling letters. And so we're going to say is equal to new falling array random x random y. And then, so that concludes that. So it's just going to cover it up, and it's just going to keep on going through that. Now, we do need to initialize, or to make this run. So how do we make that run? Well, we're going to say set interval, and we're going to give it the name of the function, so game loop, every 10 cycles. And so let's just see what that does. Okay, so, oh Lord. So it seems to be all running over here. So let me see where I can fix that. So random x, random y. Aha. So this, I got this mixed up. So this is our x, this is our y, and let's see what that does. And it looks okay. It looks kind of sparse though. It looks like we need to add a little bit more because it also is going very fast. Now, if we could slow it down in a few different ways. The first way we could slow it down is say, hey, I don't want it to run as fast as it can go. Maybe I want to run it at let's just say 500. And so let's see what that looks like. Super slow, but it kind of allows you to see what kind of characters there are. And so it's interesting in that way. I see some, I guess that's looks like Hindi or whatever. So let's look at speeding that up a little bit more. We'll say 100. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. That looks too fast, and that looks too slow. Since it does look kind of sparse, let's go ahead and put this back at 10, and let's just add some more arrays to it. Okay. So let's just go ahead and take this. Actually, I'm just going to take this for loop right here, copy it, and instead of that, I'm going to say 40. Okay, I don't want 100 there. Maybe I want 90. Okay, I don't want too many because it just slows it down quite a bit. And I'm going to take this right here, copy, and I'm going to paste this right here. Oops. And so instead of saying this at this, I'm just going to say fallenrays.push. So I'm adding a new one to it instead of replacing the original value or the value that's currently there. Okay, and so now I'm going to run this. Okay, so it kind of still looks too fast, right? So how do we fix that? Well, just like we did. So let's go ahead and look at this value right here again. And so instead of 10, let's try 50. Okay. I think I like that. Okay, I think 50 is, nice. You know, it works for me. Now, does it work for you? I don't know. Only you can decide that. We can go real close. It starts to look less matrixy like. But you can do what you like with it. There's a few different ways that you could, alter the code to get it to what you look like. I know the original code was based on a Japanese character set, and you could find the Japanese character set and only display those letters from that character set. I'm not sure exactly what font they used. You could research it and find the exact font as well, and then that would get it, almost spot on. There's some different effects that the original does, in that it kind of iterates over some static letters that are not exactly static. They change a little bit with time. And so they just, as they go over that static set, it kind of lights up and changes. And that's what I'm going to do in one of my next videos, in how to get this screen. So we wanted to just start with a very easy version. So how do we get this easy version to look more like the version that is probably more in line with what the movie had? And so that's it for this episode, or this show, this recording. And so in the next one, we'll be looking at that a little bit more difficult version, and then so forth and so on. And so if you like this, if you want to see more of this kind of series, then like and subscribe. Otherwise, leave a comment on what you didn't like. Was there something about the video that you didn't like, or that you really liked? Comment about it. And I look at all those comments, and I appreciate all the feedback, because it only helps me get better. I'm a teacher, and so we always like to sharpen our craft, and we want to do things that are going to make our next teaching experience even better. And so those comments really help me with that. So I look forward to making the next video, and I'll hope you have a good life.